you about a very general question on Ukraine.
Sure.
What exactly do you think you accomplished at this Security Council meeting?
Well, Matt, you heard from our ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She had an opportunity in the session.
Wait. You don't need to go through everything that she said and everything that everyone. What does the administration think it accomplished by bringing this to the Security Council?
Can I give a slight preamble, and then I will
repeat everything that was said in an hour.
I will come to your question, but I think it is important because not everyone is the famed Matt Lee diplomatic reporter extraordinaire, and I think the context here is important because the UN Security Council, as we know, under the UN Charter, has primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. It takes the lead in determining the existence of a threat to international peace and security, and takes the lead in examining instances of aggression. And that is precisely what we are seeing here. And you have heard that from us over the past couple months. You've heard that from our allies and partners. You heard that from members of the Security Council today. The point today, Matt, to come to your question, was to continue to shine a spotlight on what we are seeing and to demonstrate to the international community, to demonstrate to the Russian Federation that the world is united in the viewpoint that aggression, violations of a core tenet of the rules-based international order, that these elements must not be allowed to be conducted with impunity. We heard a good deal of consensus from the Security Council. We heard from many of the speakers today that this situation, the situation and the crisis on the border that Russia has needlessly precipitated, should be resolved diplomatically. That is the point that we have been emphasizing all along. Diplomacy and dialogue remains our preferred course. But there was a resounding call from the Security Council this morning that Russia should avail itself of that course. We heard from the Russian Federation, as we've heard from Moscow before, that they have no plans to invade Ukraine. But as we've consistently said, we'll be looking for deeds. We'll be looking for concrete signs of de-escalation. We and the members of the Security Council will, even as we look for those concrete signs of de-escalation and those deeds, we'll hold them to those words. We're continuing to monitor their actions. You heard that from us in the Council this morning. You've heard that from any number of allies and partners around the world. So this was the first time, despite dozens and dozens of private engagements, about 180 engagements in recent weeks alone, but this was the first time that the Security Council took up this question in an open session, and we thought that was important. We thought it was important that they do so in that venue and with that level of exposition, so that the world could hear it and the Russian Federation could hear it.
Okay, but I'm just trying to, because it just sounds like the same thing going back and forth between both sides. And when you say that the Security Council takes the lead in determining the existence of a threat to international peace and security, did the Security Council actually do anything?
Matt, this was not about a resolution. It was not about a vote. This was about an exposition of the facts.
And hasn't there been expositions after expositions after expositions
Matt,
of this going back
we are
months
not,
now?
We are not
You yourself get up here every single day and talk about, or whenever you get up here, say, I mean, just when you're briefing, you get up here and you talk about the G7, you talk about the EU, you talk about NATO, you talk about, any number of international fora that where this stuff has actually come out and been agreed on.
Matt, we are not going to apologize for engaging in robust diplomacy, for bringing this to every conceivable fora,
when you say
an
that-
appropriate fora,
Okay,
and
fine.
for continuing to be transparent with our concerns.
Okay, but that's-
If the criticism is that we are engaging too robustly in diplomacy, that we're being too transparent, that we're being too consistent in what we're saying, that is criticism that we will accept if that's
Okay.
a criticism you want to lodge.
Well, I'm not criticizing at all. I'm just curious as to when you say the world is united in opposing Russian aggression, but and you say that because of what happened in the Security Council today, then that's just flat wrong, because the world isn't united. There were two members of the council that veto wielding members of the council that didn't even want to have this meeting in the first place.
Well,
So when you talk about I just wonder, what do you think? How do you think you have advanced the cause, or your cause, the cause of the United States, of Europe, of NATO in countering Russian aggression with this meeting?
So you raised two countries. I think one country we can explain their. You can explain their opposition
one of them
pretty
has
easily.
got more people in it than the other.
The country that is behind this aggression, the country that is behind this buildup, the country that has consistently engaged in disinformation, misinformation, and propaganda in an effort to obfuscate the facts. So we can explain that country's vote. But I assume you're also referring to the PRC. A couple facts. One is that the PRC frequently does side and vote with Russia on the Security Council. That did not come as a surprise. We also understand, I think as you alluded to, that their objection today was more of an objection to the format than a dismissal of the subject. And we know that this is a matter of concern for the PRC. Secretary Blinken discussed it with Foreign Minister Wong when they connected last week. But I'd make a couple other points. One, we often hear from the PRC very forceful support for territorial integrity and the concept of sovereignty. That is a refrain of the PRC in New York, in Beijing, and around the world.
Can I just ask one thing about that? And when they talk about that, they're talking about Tibet. They're talking about Hong Kong. They're talking about all things that you actually disagree with.
These principles, the principle of sovereignty, the principle of territorial integrity, these are principles that are universal. They have universal applicability. So
then you do believe that the PRC has territorial sovereignty over Hong Kong and Tibet?
If any country believes in the concept of sovereignty, it
should be China. Is that what you're saying?
This is an episode that has the potential to undermine that core tenet of the rules-based international order.
Okay.
Two, there, of course, are a lot of issues where we don't see eye to eye with our PRC counterparts. But I think where we do see eye to eye, and you saw from the PRC's remarks their support for diplomacy, for dialogue, their support for a diplomatic resolution, I think it speaks to the fact it is in no one's interest, not in our interest, of course, not in NATO's interest, not in our European allies and partners' interests, and not in the PRC's interest to see a potentially destabilizing conflict emerge in the European continent. It would impact the PRC's interests all over the world as well. So we know how the PRC tends to operate, including in the UN Security Council. We're clear-eyed about that. But we also know that Russian aggression, a renewed Russian invasion of Ukraine, it would be a matter of great import and presumably a matter of great concern for the PRC as well. Humara.